Randolph Scott, born George Randolph Scott on January 23, 1898 in Orange County, Virginia, became a legendary icon of American cinema. He gained widespread acclaim for his stoic and commanding performances in westerns, which helped define an era of honorable and resilient screen heroes. Raised in Charlotte, North Carolina, Scott came from a well-regarded Southern family. His father, George Grant Scott, was a certified public accountant, while his mother, Lucille Crane Scott, instilled in him the values of Southern etiquette and discipline. As a young adult, Scott studied at the Georgia Institute of Technology and later at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where he developed a passion for drama and the performing arts. His formative years were a mix of academic dedication, athletic prowess, and military duty. During World War I, Scott enlisted in the U.S. Army and served in France as an artillery spotter. This period of service imbued him with a stoic composure and inner resolve, qualities that would later define his screen presence. After the war, he relocated to Los Angeles in the late 1920s, determined to pursue a career in film. Thanks to family acquaintances, he was introduced to the legendary filmmaker Howard Hughes, who helped him secure small roles in silent films. It didn't take long for his tall, chiseled features, strong jawline, and calm demeanor to catch the eye of casting agents. Early roles in films like The Far Call, 1929, and The Virginian, 1929, helped him get a foothold in the industry. Through the 1930s, Scott appeared in a wide range of genres, from romantic comedies and adventure dramas to crime thrillers. By the early part of that decade, he was landing more substantial parts, leading to breakthrough performances in titles like The Last of the Mohicans, 1936, and Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm, 1938. However, it wasn't until the 1940s that Scott fully embraced the Western genre, a space in which he would ultimately thrive and leave an indelible mark. From that point onward, he became one of the most admired and dependable stars in Western films. His authoritative yet understated screen presence resonated powerfully with audiences during this period. Over the span of a prolific career that lasted more than 30 years, Randolph Scott starred in over 100 films, more than 60 of them westerns. In contrast to many of his peers, Scott carefully crafted a consistent screen identity. He often portrayed the solitary cowboy, a man of firm principles who defended the weak, maintained law and order, and faced adversity with unwavering composure. His frequent collaborations with director Bud Boetticher and screenwriter Burt Kennedy in the 1950s produced a series of critically lauded westerns. These films, 7 Men From Now, 1956, The Tall T, 1957, Ride Lonesome, 1959, and Comanche Station, 1960, are often referred to as the Ranones cycle. They are considered masterworks of minimalist filmmaking and psychological depth, representing Scott at his most refined as an actor. What set Scott apart as a performer was not just his physical stature, but his profound ability to convey moral conviction and emotional restraint. While he frequently played the role of the virtuous protagonist, his characters were seldom flat or formulaic. They were complex men, hardened by past tragedies and battle-weary, but still firm in their commitment to what was right. His blend of quiet vulnerability, internalized pain, and noble resolve won him the admiration of both filmmakers and moviegoers. Unlike Western icon John Wayne, whose bold, extroverted characters often took center stage, Scott's performances were measured, introspective, and dignified. His version of masculinity was rooted in quiet strength and deep moral values, offering a more realistic and human portrayal of frontier life. Off-screen, he was equally shrewd, making intelligent investments in real estate, oil, and other ventures, which allowed him to retire early. Scott's final film, Ride the High Country, 1962, directed by Sam Peckinpah, marked a poignant close to his career. In the film, he starred opposite longtime friend Joel McCrea, with both portraying aging lawmen facing the end of their era. The film served as a powerful metaphor for Scott's own departure from the screen, offering a dignified farewell to his cinematic journey. Throughout his life, Randolph Scott was held in high esteem within the Hollywood community. Known for his professionalism, humility, and generosity, he remained a respected figure both in and outside the film industry. Despite never receiving an Academy Award, he never appeared to chase accolades. Instead, he earned lasting respect from critics, peers, and audiences for his unwavering dedication to his craft. His legacy, especially in the Western genre, continues to influence filmmakers and actors to this day. Directors like Martin Scorsese, Clint Eastwood, and Quentin Tarantino have acknowledged Scott's work as pivotal to their understanding of complex, character-driven storytelling and the moral ambiguities within it. In his personal life, Randolph Scott was married twice, although he kept his private affairs notably more guarded than his public cowboy persona might suggest. His first marriage took place in 1936 to Marion DuPont, a prominent American heiress and noted equestrian. Marion was a member of the influential DuPont family, among the wealthiest dynasties in U.S. history. Her father, William DuPont Sr., had played a key role in expanding the family's business empire, and her great-grandfather, Eleuthère Irénée DuPont, was the French-born industrialist who founded E. DuPont de Nemours and Company, a company that became a global powerhouse in chemicals and materials science. Interestingly, before marrying Scott, Marion had previously been wed to George Somerville, a well-known Virginia horse breeder and sportsman. In an unusual twist, Randolph Scott had served as best man at Marion's first wedding, suggesting a close friendship that preceded their romantic involvement. Though the precise nature of their transition from friends to spouses is not well documented, their union was notable for bridging the worlds of Hollywood stardom and East Coast aristocracy. Their marriage brought together two individuals from vastly different social spheres: Scott, a rising film star with Southern charm and understated charisma, and Marion, a blue-blooded socialite deeply involved in the world of elite equestrian sports. Their relationship, like much of Scott's personal life, remained largely out of the public spotlight. Randolph Scott, born as George Randolph Scott on January 23, 1898, in Orange County, Virginia, became one of the defining figures of American cinema, especially celebrated for his dignified portrayals in classic Western films. His stoic screen presence helped shape the archetype of the noble cowboy, a symbol of strength and moral clarity during Hollywood's golden era. Raised in Charlotte, North Carolina, Scott came from a prominent Southern lineage. His father, George Grant Scott, was a respected certified public accountant, while his mother, Lucille Crane Scott, instilled in him the values of discipline and proper Southern decorum. He initially pursued higher education at the Georgia Institute of Technology before transferring to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where he began cultivating a passion for performance and the arts. His formative years were marked by academic pursuits, athletic discipline, and military service. Scott served in World War I, enlisting as an artillery observer in France. The war experience forged a calm inner strength and seriousness that would come to define his later film roles. After the war, he relocated to Los Angeles in the late 1920s, seeking a future in the burgeoning movie industry. Through well-placed connections, Scott met aviation mogul and film producer Howard Hughes, who helped him land minor roles in silent pictures. It didn't take long for casting agents to take note of Scott's commanding height, chiseled features, and understated demeanor. He earned early recognition through appearances in films like The Far Call, 1929, and The Virginian, 1929, gradually gaining traction in Hollywood. Throughout the 1930s, he starred in a variety of genres: romance, action, and crime dramas. But it was in the Western genre that he truly found his calling. By the 1940s and 1950s, Randolph Scott had become synonymous with Western films, appearing in more than 100 productions, over 60 of them Westerns. He carefully shaped his on-screen identity, consistently portraying lone cowboys who stood for justice, dignity, and moral conviction. His performances were defined by quiet power, resilience, and a deep emotional undercurrent. Scott's frequent collaborations with director Bud Boeticher and screenwriter Burt Kennedy produced some of the era's most revered Westerns, including 7 Men from Now, 1956, The Tall T, 1957, Ride Lonesome, 1959, and Comanche Station, 1960. These films, collectively known as the Rannone cycle, are praised today for their psychological nuance and minimalist storytelling. Scott's characters were not loud or boastful. They were shaped by sorrow, loss, and unyielding ethics. He provided a restrained alternative to the bravado of stars like John Wayne, opting instead to show a more introspective brand of frontier masculinity. In addition to his screen success, Scott proved himself to be a wise investor, accumulating wealth through ventures in oil, real estate, and business. This financial acumen allowed him to retire in the early 1960s, concluding his acting career with the critically acclaimed Ride the High Country, 1962, directed by Sam Peckinpah. In that film, Scott portrayed an aging lawman confronting the fading spirit of the Old West, mirroring his own graceful departure from cinema. Although he never received an Academy Award, Scott was revered in Hollywood for his professionalism, work ethic, and humility. Directors like Martin Scorsese, Clint Eastwood, and Quentin Tarantino have cited his influence in crafting morally complex characters and minimalist narratives. Scott's personal life was far more private than his public persona suggested. He married twice, first in 1936 to Marion DuPont, a distinguished American equestrian and heiress to the DuPont family fortune. Her father, William DuPont Sr., was instrumental in expanding the family's industrial dominance, while her great-grandfather, Eleuthère Irénée DuPont, had founded what would become one of the largest chemical companies in the world. Before marrying Scott, Marion had previously wed horse breeder George Somerville, with Scott himself serving as best man at the wedding. This intriguing detail indicates the close familiarity between Scott and Marion prior to their romantic involvement. Despite the impressive pedigree and initial promise of their marriage, the union lasted just 3 years. They divorced in 1939 without having children, reportedly due to incompatible lifestyles. Marion's deep roots in Virginia's horse country clashing with Scott's West Coast film commitments. Yet, an unusual bond remained between them. Marion retained the name Scott for the rest of her life, continuing to go by Marion DuPont Scott until her death in 1983. During those years, she became a respected figure in horse racing, transforming her Montpelier estate in Virginia into a renowned center for equestrian excellence and eventually donating it to the National Trust for Historic Preservation. Scott's second and final marriage was to actress Patricia Stillman in 1944, a partnership that endured for over 4 decades. Born in 1919, Patricia was 21 years Scott's junior and had a brief career in Hollywood before stepping away to prioritize family life. Their marriage was marked by harmony, mutual respect, and shared values, qualities that were rare in the fast-paced world of show business. In 1950, the couple adopted 2 children, a daughter named Sandra and a son named Christopher. Though the reasons behind their choice to adopt remain private, it reflected their desire to maintain a peaceful, grounded household. By the mid-1950s, Scott began to scale back his acting work, focusing instead on his family and personal interests. The Scotts lived in a stately Beverly Hills residence, and Randolph became known in his later years not only as a Hollywood legend, but as a devoted father and husband. Patricia stayed by his side until his passing in 1987, and she lived on until 2001. Throughout their life together, Randolph and Patricia Scott projected an image of quiet domestic contentment, a sharp contrast to the often dramatic personal lives of many of their Hollywood peers. Their enduring marriage stood as a quiet but powerful part of Scott's legacy. During the conservative mid-century Hollywood era, the price of being openly gay was often career death. In his later years, Randolph Scott, always a man of discretion, reportedly spoke candidly about several friends and colleagues who were forced to hide their sexuality due to societal pressure and industry expectations. He named 6 such individuals, men whose lives were shaped by the necessity of secrecy. Among them was Cary Grant, perhaps the most prominent figure on the list, and someone intimately tied to Scott himself. The two shared a close relationship during the 1930s and 1940s, living together for more than a decade in a Santa Monica beach house. Branded bachelor roommates by the press, they were frequently photographed in domestic settings, lounging poolside or dining together. While both men would go on to marry women, rumors of a romantic relationship between them have persisted for generations. Montgomery Clift, another name Scott reportedly mentioned, was a deeply emotional actor whose intense performances in A Place in the Sun and From Here to Eternity captivated audiences. Though he never publicly acknowledged being gay, Clift's sexuality was well known among Hollywood insiders. Struggling with deep emotional turmoil and later physical trauma from a catastrophic 1956 car crash, Clift embodied the pain of living inauthentically. Scott, who knew Clift personally, expressed sorrow for the isolation Clift endured. The next name was Merv Griffin, who rose to fame not just as a television host, but as the creator of legendary game shows like Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune. Despite persistent rumors, Griffin never publicly addressed his sexuality. Yet Scott was aware of the quiet burden Griffin carried, balancing fame, wealth, and the necessity of silence in a judgmental world where disclosure could spell disaster. Jim Nabors, the lovable star of Gomer Pyle, USMC, was also included. Nabors was in a long-term relationship with Stan Cadwallader, whom he eventually married in 2013. But during the height of his career, Nabors was forced to hide the truth. One cruel urban myth falsely claimed that Nabors and Rock Hudson had secretly married, a rumor that deeply hurt Nabors and underscored how dangerous and toxic the industry's rumor mill could be for gay performers. Cesar Romero, often cast in debonair roles and most famously remembered for his flamboyant portrayal of the Joker in the 1960s Batman TV series, exuded charm and charisma throughout his career. Although he never married, Romero carefully maintained a public image as a ladies' man. Behind closed doors, however, his homosexuality was something of an open secret within Hollywood circles. Randolph Scott, who deeply admired Romero's sophistication and quick wit, once expressed sorrow at the sacrifices Romero had to make. "He was a man of immense grace," Scott reportedly said, "but he was never allowed to love openly. It was a quiet tragedy, emblematic of an industry that demanded conformity and punished authenticity." The final name on Scott's list was arguably the most heartbreaking: Rock Hudson. As a towering symbol of 1950s masculinity, Hudson headlined romantic films opposite actresses like Doris Day, capturing the hearts of audiences worldwide. Yet, off-screen, Hudson lived a secret life, carefully managed by his agent, Henry Wilson, who was known for discovering and molding young male actors while meticulously shielding their private affairs from public scrutiny. Hudson's sexuality remained hidden until the 1980s, when he was diagnosed with AIDS. His subsequent death in 1985 marked a pivotal moment in Hollywood history, forcing the entertainment world and society at large to confront the realities of both the AIDS epidemic and the long-silenced lives of gay celebrities. For Scott, Hudson's tragedy was deeply personal. He had watched the younger actor rise to stardom while burdened by secrecy. The news of Hudson's illness and passing stirred in Scott a sense of mourning, not only for the man himself, but for the many years Hudson spent concealing his true identity in a world that refused to accept him. By naming these 6 men, Cary Grant, Montgomery Clift, Merv Griffin, Jim Nabors, Cesar Romero, and Rock Hudson, Randolph Scott was not stirring scandal or engaging in idle gossip. He was paying tribute. His reflections served as an acknowledgement of their inner strength, a recognition of the emotional cost they bore, and an implicit condemnation of a culture that forced them into silence. Though Scott himself remained discreet about his own personal life, his words conveyed a powerful message about the Hollywood of yesteryear, a world glittering with stardom but shadowed by repression. He bore witness to that reality, and in doing so, he helped ensure that these men's stories would not be forgotten. Randolph Scott passed away on March 2, 1987, at the age of 89 in Beverly Hills, California. The cause of death was attributed to complications involving his heart and lungs, ailments not uncommon in elderly individuals, especially those who may have been exposed to smoking or the harsh environmental conditions on early film sets. In his final years, Scott had withdrawn from the public eye, embracing a quiet life far from the bustle of movie premieres and Hollywood parties. Yet, his death was met with widespread respect and remembrance from fans, peers, and film historians who continued to revere him as a cornerstone of American cinema, especially within the Western genre, where he stood as a symbol of rugged integrity and quiet heroism. Following his passing, Scott was laid to rest at Elmwood Cemetery in Charlotte, North Carolina, a place deeply tied to his roots. As his hometown and the setting of his formative years, Charlotte remained a key part of his identity, and being buried there symbolized a full-circle return to the values and soil that had shaped him. Elmwood Cemetery, one of the region's most historic burial grounds, is home to numerous notable figures. Scott's final resting place has since become a quiet pilgrimage site for those who cherished his contributions to film and admired the dignity with which he lived his life. His enduring marriage to Patricia Stillman Scott was one of Hollywood's rare examples of long-term stability. The couple met in the early 1940s and wed in 1944, maintaining a union that lasted 43 years. In a town notorious for its fleeting romances and headline-grabbing breakups, the Scotts were known for their discretion and devotion. They deliberately avoided the Hollywood party circuit, choosing instead a life centered around family, shared values, and mutual respect. Patricia was by Randolph's side as he transitioned from leading man to private citizen, offering steady companionship through both the highs and the quiet twilight of his retirement. She survived him by 17 years, eventually passing away in 2004. In a final testament to their unbreakable bond, Patricia was buried beside her husband at Elmwood Cemetery. Their side-by-side interment underscored not only their commitment to each other in life, but also their connection in death, a love story that quietly defied the turbulent nature of the industry they had once inhabited. The couple's home in their later years was a striking mid-century modern residence in Beverly Hills, reflecting their taste for refined, understated elegance. The house was emblematic of post-war architectural ideals, featuring clean lines, natural materials, and open spaces that invited light and serenity. It served not only as a peaceful haven, but also as a subtle expression of the Scots lifestyle, thoughtful, refined, and private. Sadly, the home was demolished in 2008, erasing a unique architectural treasure and one of the last physical ties to Randolph Scott's legacy. The loss marked more than just the destruction of a structure. It symbolized the vanishing of a chapter in Hollywood's golden history. Yet Scott's influence lives on. Upon his death, his personal archives, known as the Randolph Scott Papers, were entrusted to the UCLA Library Special Collections. This invaluable repository includes rare photographs, meticulously arranged scrapbooks, candid correspondence, handwritten notes, published writings, and even original blueprints of his now destroyed Beverly Hills home. Together, these documents paint a vivid portrait of the man behind the myth, a thoughtful, deliberate figure whose legacy extended well beyond the silver screen. Today, the Randolph Scott Papers serve not only as a resource for film historians, but also as a lasting testament to a man who, though often portraying silent, steely cowboys, possessed profound emotional depth and integrity. Through these preserved materials, his voice continues to resonate, offering future generations insight into a life defined not just by stardom, but by quiet courage and unshakable principle.